And so Beanie Geoghegan is our first speaker. And you can read about her bio. She's a mother. She has children. She's involved in education. And about 3 years ago, like me, she began learning some things that were very disturbing. And as she learned about things, it drove her to get involved. And so I'd like to just give a warm welcome to Beanie.
Thank you. I'll try not to trip over this board here. So normally when I stand up and talk on education, I literally eat, sleep, and breathe all of the topics that I have been focusing on for the last 2.5 to 3 years. And so I can just prattle on for hours, which you don't want. And I was also given a sort of a laser focus as to what my topic was supposed to be. So I'm going to share my thoughts on this, and then I've allowed for plenty of time for comments and questions afterwards. And I hope we can have just a really good discussion afterwards. I know you guys are going to have some questions about some of the things that I don't touch on, so please feel free when I finish speaking to share. So after years of, oh wait, let me put up how do I advance this? What do I press?
I've got it.
Okay. Doesn't want you to look at that. So after years of squinting and losing cheap reading glasses throughout the house and cars, I finally convinced my husband to go to the eye doctor. His career necessitates good vision, so it has always been important to him and a bit of a sensitive subject. He finally scheduled an appointment and was issued prescription glasses that made everything much clearer. In fact, he didn't realize how bad his vision had gotten until he looked through the new lenses. Now, whenever the lens gets even the tiniest scratch or a bit of dirt on it, he's very aware of it and is bothered by it. The lens through which he now sees the world is clearer, more vibrant, and gives him confidence that what he's seeing is not compromised by the deficiency of his eyesight. What does this have to do with Christian education? I was asked to share my thoughts about the difference between Christian and secular education, and I thought this was a good analogy. What makes a Christian education different from secular education? I would say it has to do with the lens through which students learn to view the world. A solid Christian education that relies on the Bible for its final authority allows children to view the world through, A solid Christian education that relies on the Bible for its final authority allows children to see clearly through the lens of Scripture all that God has done for them, given them, and prepared in advance for them to do. Viewing life through this lens will likely make things clearer, more vibrant, and give them the confidence that God will provide for their human deficiencies when they face uncertainty. After years of learning to view life through the lens of scriptural truth, students will likely become keenly aware when something doesn't seem quite right. A belief, behavior, or decision that the world deems appropriate will bother them, and they will feel compelled to go against the tide. It should also cultivate and nurture a humble attitude of gratitude in students. A heart and mind overflowing with gratitude becomes the lens through which students experience the various people, places, and events they encounter along their life's journey. This begins with the foundation that God, in His infinite wisdom and love, created each one of us as unique individuals with purpose and potential. That alone kindles the flame of gratitude and should spark the desire to reach that potential as a means of demonstrating it. In my experience and opinion, this differs from the lens of entitlement that is so often cultivated in our consumer-oriented society, beginning with secular schools. Even well-meaning parents, teachers, and administrators will use the word deserve when pleading their case for newer buildings, better technology, or fancier equipment. Our students deserve to learn how to read, write, compute, and discover truth. And activist teachers whose sole purpose is to promote a destructive political ideology in the classroom. The rest is a luxury, not a necessity. However, by using the word deserve, it plants a seed of entitlement in the tender hearts and minds of students. If that seed is fed and watered regularly by a secular society focused on needing more, it could grow into a thorny weed certain to destroy any healthy shoots that were beginning to sprout. So what does this look like in practical terms inside the K-12 classroom? To begin with, Christian schools have the opportunity to incorporate Scripture into every aspect of the day. They can start the year with Genesis and immediately instill in children a sense of awe and wonder for their Creator and their place in His creation. When I visited the Dream Center Academy about a month ago, the students had just finished reading the creation story. I was able to see the pictures they drew afterwards. Most drew large trees, animals, stars, and oceans. If they included people, they were generally much smaller in scale. We know that God made man in His image and that we are different from every other part of His creation. But it is healthy for us and for children to know that we are just a small part of a very big world rather than the center of that world. If we teach children from an early age that they, not God, are the center of the universe, they will have a very difficult time giving up their spot for Him later in life. As a civics teacher at More Grace Christian Academy last year, I actually found it incredibly difficult to not include scriptural truths in my lessons. While we do not have a national religion and some of our founders were not professing Christians, our country was founded upon Judeo-Christian principles. Even those who would never darken the doorway of a church knew that religion and morality were necessary for a civil society and a prosperous nation. I will never forget when I introduced the Declaration of Independence to my students. Several had never heard of it, and most did not really know what it was about. This broke my heart because it is the foundation of our country and the foundation for the gratitude we should all have for those who risked everything for their posterity. I equipped each student with the best resource I could find, a pocket constitution and declaration, and we read straight from the source. Of course, we stopped a lot along the way to discuss why the colonists saw the need to declare their independence in the first place. I explained to the students that until that time, the king dictated the rights of the people and could endow or limit them as he saw fit. I then explained that the colonists believed our rights come from God and could not be taken away by the government. One student slapped his hand on the table and asked, "Why didn't anyone tell me this before?" It's a hard concept to explain in secular schools because there is no way to get around the fact that our founders believed in a creator. It is truly impossible to discuss inalienable rights without discussing who those come from. It is also challenging to teach about the courage of the 56 men who put their careers, families, and lives on the line to ensure that those God-given rights would be regarded in this new experiment called America without cultivating gratitude for their sacrifice. I actually spent a whole class period discussing the fate of each signer so my students could understand more clearly what they risked. I didn't want them to be paralyzed by guilt. I wanted them to be propelled by gratitude. As we moved along in our study of the founding documents, we discussed the Bill of Rights. They appreciated the First Amendment because they valued the right to speak their minds, as most adolescents do. But it led to an interesting discussion about compelled speech as well. I told them that public schools cannot even compel them to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And they said most of their classmates, former classmates, did not. They even admitted that they didn't usually stand from sheer laziness. One student stated that she would always stand now that she knew how many people had sacrificed so much for her freedom, and that she would encourage others to do so as well. Gratitude, not force, would compel her to stand for the flag and all it means going forward. Over the summer, we began using the Abeka Civics activity book in my class. One of the first few pages asked the students to complete the statement, "What makes my country special?" I loved reading all of the responses, but one student's response made me especially happy. After explaining what made her country special, she wrote, "I love America with all my heart, and I am truly grateful for it." Gratitude, not force, will compel her to be a generous, responsible, kind, and productive citizen as she grows up. Of course, gratitude is not just taught in the classroom. Giving thanks for the food they eat and the hands that prepare it every day incorporates thankfulness into the day. Thanking God for their teachers, classmates, and facilities helps stave off the natural tendency to take those people and things for granted. We have taken several outdoor field trips to various places, and each time we stopped and gave thanks for God's amazing creation and the opportunity to spend time in it. We didn't worship the beauty of nature. We worshiped the one who was gracious enough to bless us with that beauty. Obviously, there are other elements that set Christian education apart from secular education. but viewing life through the lens of gratitude is one that resonates with me personally. Although I faced some tough obstacles growing up and made some poor decisions along the way, I was blessed with 8 years of a good Catholic education. I then attended a public high school, for which I am very grateful since I met my husband there. But unfortunately, I was fully indoctrinated into worldly views in college and went on to become that teacher who was going to save the world. I was not motivated by kindness or love. I was motivated by pride and arrogance. I thought I knew better than everyone else how to fix society, so I charged ahead. Thankfully, God slammed a lot of doors, sat me down for Bible study and prayer, and opened different doors in His time. After 8 years of Catholic education as a child, God provided me with another 8 years of rigorous biblical education as an adult in Bible study fellowship. That time truly helped me understand how undeserving I was of all that God had provided and how faithful and generous He is to His children. That was the springboard to action for me, this time motivated by kindness, love, and immense gratitude. Over a decade has passed since that time. Last year, Pastor Cecil Bly and I were discussing my journey that led me to serve at More Grace. I remember him asking me why I do the things I do, and without skipping a beat, I answered, gratitude. If we can instill that level of gratitude in students as we prepare them academically in school, we will be cultivating a generation of well-educated, kind, generous citizens who would give back to their community, help a neighbor, mentor a young person, start a business, and serve in their church as a way of demonstrating that gratitude. Gratitude, not guilt or force, will motivate them. Aside from cultivating a lens of gratitude, what does Christian education look like compared to secular education in the day-to-day routine? Let's consider discipline. Students who attend a Christian school are given clear boundaries, guidelines, and expectations based on objective truth between right and wrong. They don't have to worry that that definition is going to change or the lines will be blurred by the current culture's definition. As Christian educators, we can and should spend time teaching students discipline, so we spend less time issuing punishments and more time focusing on academics. Often when I'm correcting students at More Grace, something that I don't really have to do that often, I will refer to the fruits of the Spirit. I remind them that those don't come naturally to us, but if we're listening to the Spirit, He will enable us to practice patience, self-control, or whichever fruit they're struggling with at that time. If a student is giving less than 100%, I might remind them of Colossians 3:23. I tell them that we should always be pursuing excellence, knowing that we will not achieve perfection in this life. The pursuit will make us better and stronger and will glorify God. Compare this to the current environment in many secular schools. There seems to be no rhyme or reason to the rules in many cases. Terms like my truth and your truth are thrown around until nobody knows what the real truth is. If there is no objective truth, then how can there be clear rules or guidelines determining right or wrong behavior? Imagine how stifling that would be for young students. If they never know what the right thing is to say or do, they will likely tend to say and do nothing. That is not an environment that encourages creativity, curiosity, or intellectual growth. There's also a trend in many secular schools to accept whatever level of effort a student gives without demanding more. It's considered compassionate and equitable. I've had teachers tell me that they were instructed by administrators to pass students regardless of their participation, attendance, or effort. These teachers are forced to settle for mediocrity rather than challenge their students to pursue excellence. In my opinion, that is a grave injustice to the students and will only perpetuate any inequities that exist in society. We haven't even touched on the curriculum materials used in Christian schools versus secular schools. I'm going to leave that for the question and answer portion of my talk. Count on you guys to ask good questions. But I can tell you with great confidence that there is a vast difference between them, from content to quality, and it really matters. I will close with the words of Noah Webster, who is the father of 8, Christian, and advocate for quality education. Education comprehends all, which is intended to enlighten the understanding, correct the temper, and form the manners and habits of youth, and fit them for usefulness in their future stations. To give children a good education in manners and arts and science is important. To give them a religious education is indispensable, and an immense responsibility rests on parents and guardians who neglect these duties. This is our responsibility, and we cannot afford to risk neglecting it. We must make sure our children have a clear lens with which to view the world and a firm foundation to build their faith upon. A beginning so solid that the storms of life, which will inevitably come, cannot shake or weaken the integrity of the structure or the certainty of that faith. That is what parents strive to provide for their children and what Christian education can bolster if done well. So, that was the perfect question. If you all have questions about how or why I'm standing up here today, I would love to talk.
So we have a mobile mic here. So I'll bring the mic around to people with questions. And so if you raise your hand,
What would your recommendation, by the way, I really enjoyed your message, very powerful, but what would your recommendation be for someone who doesn't have their children? I mean, our children are all older, my children are all older than you are, but thinking grandchildren and thinking ahead, but in a public school, a Christian family, their children aren't in a Christian school, maybe due to location or cost or whatever the reason may be, what kind of would your recommendation be for children that you have in a public school, but you're a Christian family?
So all 4 of my children attended public school. 3 of them graduated from public school, and my daughter, her freshman year, after struggling through internalized misogyny in her freshman English class, that's what they studied, and they read 1 book. She opted out, so she's now homeschooling. So I graduated from public high school, so so I get that. Was never a proponent or fan of homeschooling. I was a classroom teacher before I became a stay-at-home mom, and then went back to be a classroom teacher, PTA president. I was pro-public schools, okay? So this is where I'm coming from. My advice to parents in a Christian setting today, if they can do it, is homeschool. And I know that's like, oh, well, yeah, easy suggestion. No, it's not easy. That would be my advice, because quite honestly, I kind of came from the perspective of, well, my children are strong in their faith and they're Christians, and so they can go out into this world and they can disciple out there. We are sending them into a war zone that tender faith is not really able to stand up against most. And then not only that, even if they do stand strong in their faith, their innocence is going to be, if not destroyed, at least considerably chipped away at, because there are things that are being presented to students that you can't prevent. There's an 8th grade middle school here in Jefferson County currently reading a book. And in the book, it describes in great detail a 1st grade child being molested by an adult. There was no warning that this book was taking place. This is not just a book on the shelf that children can go choose. This is an assigned book that was being read. My friend whose daughter is in this class, they are strong Christians, and when she picked her daughter up from school that day, she just saw the terror on her daughter's face, because that wasn't her world. That wasn't, so a part of her innocence had been destroyed that day, and any other student. So once upon a time, I would have said, you just keep talking to your kids at the dinner table, and you just keep, and certainly still do that. But if parents can do it today, my recommendation is homeschool, or start a homeschool pod, or join a co-op or something like that. And I hate to say that as someone who, I think I even went to like a march at Van Hoos to support public schools at one point in time. I was really a strong supporter of public schools. There is a lot of evil there now. To say that, there are a lot of really good Christian teachers in the public school setting. They have been completely silenced, whether it be through intimidation or fear or whatever it is. Some of them are my dear friends, and one she's a 2nd grade teacher. We'll get messages from her in the morning as we're both sitting there in our quiet time, and she's asking for prayers for the day. So There are good teachers there. There are some good administrators there. There is just a lot of people there, and I've already told my 4 kids, if I have to, I'll homeschool my grandkids because they're not going into the public schools the way that they are today. Now, we have 50 million children in the United States that attend public schools. We've got to do something to fix that. That's the largest mission field in our country, and Christians don't touch it. We leave it for the left to handle. So I think that we do need to make adjustments because in reality, most children will still attend public schools. But for right now, if you have any way, shape, or form of homeschooling, that is my recommendation to parents who are saying, what should I do? So I'm sorry, that's probably not the answer that most people are hoping for, but.
What kind of rights do parents have? I see a lot of school board meetings now, and parents are really starting to speak up against some of the policies and some of the curriculum that is showing up in these schools. And a lot of cases, they're getting shut down, but then in a lot of other cases, they're getting louder. So what advice would you have for parents or grandparents to get involved in public schools?
So the first school board meeting I ever attended was July 2020, and that was when I spoke at, and so like that's how, yeah, I was not. So parents do have rights. Parents aren't necessarily exercising their rights in schools. We do have a right to see all the curriculum that our children are being taught. However, they make it really difficult to do that. When we had, there was another middle school here in Jefferson County, and they were in health class, and they played a game, and in this game, I'm not going to get specific here, but in this game, they brought up some topics that these young 8th grade students did not need to know about. So we emailed the teacher and asked to see the curriculum. We were told that the curriculum couldn't be shown to us because they were still developing it. Yeah. So they're teaching a curriculum that's about sex ed in 8th grade. Parents aren't notified of this, but the curriculum's still being generated. So, okay, well, we wanted to know specifically where this came from, so we actually had to file an open records request for the lesson plans. So that's one thing that when parents ask to see what are my kids being taught, they're given standards. Well, look at the standards. They're posted. All of our standards are posted. We're transparent, right? No, I want to see the materials. What game did you play with my child in class? Where did you get these words that introduced my daughter to sexual activity that I would hope she never knew about, kind of thing. So we had to file open records request for that. So I'm pressing our legislators to pass a Parents' Bill of Rights so that everything is transparent. As a teacher, I know that on Friday afternoon before I left the building, I had to have my lesson plans for the next week on my principal's desk. I taught before it was all computerized. So teachers could post their lesson plans, including any books, videos, apps, anything like that. They could post them all online, and then there would be no question for that. I just think parents don't realize or don't think that they can ask, and then sometimes when they do ask, there's this wall put up, and then they don't know where to go from there. So that's why we have the open records request policy. In that can also be hard to navigate as well, and we help parents do that through No Left Turn. But I would say as a parent, just remember that they're your children. They are your children. Never, when you put your child on the bus or drop your child off at school, did you put them in the hands of the government and say, I want them to raise my child. You are there to teach them to read, write, and we'll handle the rest. So, and I think that parents just need to kind of be a little more forceful about exercising their rights. I posted the other day, on Constitution Day, I said, Happy Constitution Day, make sure you exercise your rights because lack of exercise leads to atrophy. And I believe that's where we are in the public school system that, and I'm guilty of that. As a parent, I didn't exercise my rights, and so they are totally atrophied. I mean, we're there.
I'm afraid to have the microphone because there's so much to say here.
That's why I wrote mine.
I guess truly I just would like to know, being a teacher in private school and the secular students do you see a large influx, especially here of late, coming into the private school system?
Well, the school that I teach at is tiny. So now we do have quite a few coming in from the public schools now that weren't necessarily, the original school started with families from the congregation. So that was it. So everybody was sort of on the same page there. We do now have students that are not there. And, you know, again, that's our mission field that they come to us. And I think that this is really and truly a prime opportunity for the church to step in and stand in the gap for children. I mean, when you go back to the 1600s, why were schools started? So people could read the Bible, right? So guess what? They could probably not read the Bible anymore really well. So come on, church, capital C, stand up and offer that. During NTI, when schools were shut down, our church opened up an NTI lab, I guess, for lack of a better term. And we had 25 students there every single day. Every single day. When the public schools were shut down, we had 25 students come. Not one of them was a member of our church. We just, you know, reached out into the community, talked to the the family resource people at the public schools, and they came in every single day, and we managed for a year and a half. You know, all day, every day, staffed by volunteers, we did that. And it was an opportunity for the church to stand in the gap for those kids, because a lot of those children would have been home, either home alone, or maybe home with a computer, babysitter. The one little girl that I sort of latched onto and became sort of a mentor for, her mom was there. Her mom didn't work, but her mom, having graduated from school in Flint, Michigan, read on about 4th grade level. And this little girl was in 4th grade. And so the mom couldn't help. And so I actually ended up helping the little girl and the mom. And, you know, so there's opportunities there, and I think the church needs to be, we have just been so hands off of schools because the whole separation of church and state, which has been, it's like, stop. No, the church is actually supposed to be involved in that part of it. And if we don't do it, the world will do it. The world is doing it. And so I think that if unchurched children come into these private schools, I think that the schools need to see that as a really great opportunity to witness to them, to love on them, and to give them a solid academic, education. So.
Thank you for your presentation. I really appreciate it. It seems like I call it government schools.
Yes.
It seems like with government schools, if you go to school board meetings, there's not an interest in really hearing what people want. And so if the people who are running schools aren't interested in hearing what people have to say, do you feel there's a role for businesses in that community to stand in that gap for parents? And maybe do they have more influence with that school, oddly, than parents would? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Absolutely. And probably about a year ago, I was sort of begging and pleading for business leaders in Louisville to step up. I mean, where are your next employees coming from? When a student graduates from high school and they can't read the training manual, my son works in a local company here, and he was saying that there was a kid that got hired on, a young man that got hired on, and he works in equipment. So one of the words that he had to read was lubricant viscosity. The guy didn't know how to read the word, didn't even know how to find what he was supposed, the part he was supposed to look at, because he didn't know how to read the word. And so my son had to go over and help him read that word. This kid is 22 years old. I say kid, that's the wrong term. He's young. But that matters, because if you're going to be hiring high school graduates and they have maybe a 6th grade literacy level, you're going to do more than just train them how to be a customer service rep or how to sell the product. You're going to actually have to teach them how to read. Same thing, these students graduating and going straight into college. They're not prepared for college level courses. They're taking remedial courses, which tacks on an extra year of college, which tacks on an extra burden for those of us who get to eventually pay that bill, right? So I definitely think that the business leaders in these communities have a vested interest in having a well-educated populace, just like our government has a vested interest in having a well-educated populace. It is very important, and I think that because the businesses can move out of the community, if that's not the case, that I definitely think they have much more leverage than a parent who goes and speaks at a school board meeting. And I mean, literally when I was speaking at a school board meeting, they're flinging their pens and they're checking their cell phones, and they don't care what I have to say. They don't care what I have to say. I'm one vote in a district that's not even up for election this time around. So yeah, so I would really strongly encourage the business leaders to get involved and to have conversations with the school board members and let them know we're in real trouble here. Not to mention, look at the behavior, the discipline issues. Do you want to hire that? Somebody who doesn't necessarily have to show up and still gets an A. Do that mean they get to maybe not show up to work and still get paid? I mean, they're learning these behaviors that they're going to then take out into the workforce. So, yes.
Beanie, first of all, thank you. This is really good presentation. To the gentleman in the back, you're talking about your children in public schools, and if homeschooling is works for you, that would be great. But if it doesn't, there are a whole lot of really good resources to help you understand how can you shed the light of Jesus Christ in public schools. How can your students work that way? How can they help the teachers that way? So I'd be glad to share some of those with you later on if that's helpful to you.
Thank you. I didn't mean to sound like such a negative Nelly on that.
Yeah.
I can probably talk loud enough. So at the beginning, we were talking about gratitude, not, what was that next word?
Entitlement.
Entitlement.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I know that sounds really harsh when I say, kids don't deserve X, Y, Z, but why do they deserve that? I mean, I love my 4 children and, want to give them everything, but I don't. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. They really, it's not that they deserve it, it's because I want to give them things. So I just think we need to be careful using that word. We use that word a lot.
I'm Victor Geoghegan. I'm very thankful for what you have just presented, but I'm very much concerned, also scared. Being a foreigner in the city and hearing what is happening with the American children, and knowing what is happening with the immigrants and refugee kids, it is really hard. I understand now why they behave the way they behave now. So the immigrant kids are being recruited in some of the behaviors. We can see now a lot of changes. And we are so scared, and parents don't speak English, they don't know exactly what is happening. So my concern now, how could we help these immigrant kids whose parents don't even know what is happening?
Mm-hmm. And that's a great question, and that's actually been a really big concern of ours because we have found several really horrible books in the library at Newcomer Academy, which we know Newcomer Academy is primarily immigrant children, and many of the parents don't speak English. And the books that we've found, we know go directly against the cultures and faiths that are found in Newcomer Academy. And we don't really know how to educate. I mean, we have so many different languages involved, and I think that in many cases, parents are just getting acclimated and just figuring out the routine. And how do we let them know you need to go to school and tell them this is not okay? We have communicated with the Cuban American community, and they are very aware of it, and they stand up. But we would love to get involved with the immigrant community and let them know what their rights are, because I think, actually they might know their rights better than some American citizens might know their rights, but you actually can go to the school and you can speak up and know, because I have talked to some older immigrants who've been here for decades, and that's one thing that they said is that they've seen the shift over the generations. It's like that second generation that's been here, all of a sudden they're Americanized, And that's not a good term necessarily. They've picked up on the behaviors, the work ethic, and they'll say, in fact, we had one gentleman working at our house and he said his son was back in Mexico, but his daughter was here, and the daughter, he just kept shaking his head, but he said the son is in dental school and working hard and doing this, and so, but his daughter had been Americanized, and that term shouldn't be a negative descriptor. That should be a positive thing, but it's not. So I would love to get with you. I will give you my card and we'll figure out how to connect with the immigrant community and give you all some resources to do that. So, yeah.
What I hear you say, Beanie, is that any immigrants would be just like any American community, collectively coming together to create a group to go make a difference. And what you're addressing is it's very difficult for one person to go make a difference. But if you have anybody in education who have kids being educated, it'd be good to go join a group and be part of a bigger party to go make that difference. Other questions? Say, Beanie, as you became active, I'm curious, what was the catalyst that got you to really step in?
So, of course, I was mad that my kids were not in school. That whole March through May was a joke, and then when I saw that they were going to be starting virtual school again, that following fall, I was angry again. It was like everybody else, I just wanted them back in school. Just be normal, just be back in school. And 2 of my kids had come home from college, and all of a sudden, all 6 of us were living together. And love my kids, but there's a lot of togetherness. But when they started, when we started back in the fall, my one son was a senior, and then my daughter was a freshman. She was a freshman at the #1 high school in our district, and she was in advanced classes. And I'm walking through the kitchen one day, and there's my son sitting at the computer, and in his English class, they're talking about intersectionality. I had to go look it up. I didn't know what intersectionality meant. When I came back, and looked at it, what are you doing? You're not doing that. I don't know why you're doing this in English class, but you're not doing that. And he's like, Mom. I'm like, well, we're not. So I emailed the teacher. We had a back and forth. She was very condescending and very disrespectful. I was nothing but respectful because I always assume the teacher's right, being a former teacher. She had her t-shirt on her Bitmoji that led me to believe exactly where she stood, ideologically. And so anyhow, so we went from there, and then it was just a couple of days later that my daughter in her advanced freshman English class at the #1 high school in the district was talking about internalized misogyny. What does this have to do with English? And why aren't you taking the cream of the crop and reading Shakespeare and, teaching them how to write beautiful papers? And no, and she read one book all year, by the way. Animal Farm was the only book they read in that class. And they were given a 36-page packet of excerpts from all sorts of social justice warrior writings. I mean, it was all, I sent copies to all of our legislators. Those who want to tell me that critical race theory is not in our schools, I mean, I have receipts, but so that's kind of what got me started, and I was, as they're in their classes talking about all of these different things and never studying English, I'm just raging, angry, frustrated, like what is going on? I've been involved with schools for so long, how did I miss this? Really just to the point my kids were like, Mom, and that's when I found No Left Turn in Education and realized that we can actually start working. Well, first I realized there was community. So back to the community, knowing that I'm not alone. I'm not the only parent out there. I had moved away from the group that just wanted kids back in school because I'm like, I don't think I want my kids back in school. If this is what they're going to be doing while I can see what's going on in the classroom, what are they going to be doing when I can't see what's going on in the classroom? So it sort of moved away from that, discovered No Left Turn in Education, found community there. We started working on solutions. And for the first time in, about a year then, I started feeling hopeful and positive and thinking, you know what? There's bad out there, but there's a lot of us waking up. And I can tell you right now, more and more and more and more are waking up every single day, and we're figuring out that we don't have to just be angry and frustrated. We can be active, and we can be involved, and we can actually make some positive changes. So
Thank you very much, Beanie. And maybe as a takeaway, that even if you don't have children in school, you can educate those that do. And so this whole sense of being a voice, helping others to get involved, helping others get in a community where they can go make a difference. But thank you very much, Beanie.